بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So today we're going to speak about the name of Allah Azza wa Jal, Al-Ghafur, Al-Ghafur, which is the forgiving. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of his names is Al-Ghafur. He also described himself in the Quran as Ghaffar and also Ghafir, descriptions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is the root of that word? What does it mean? If we go to the Battle of Badr, we all know famously in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he wore a mighfar. A mighfar was the helmet. That's the one that was, when they hit the Prophet ﷺ, it went into his blessed cheek, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So mighfar, what is the mighfar? It's a helmet. What does the helmet do? It shields, it conceals, it protects. So the Ghafur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being Al-Ghafur, meaning He shields you and conceals your sins. He conceals your sins, shields you from them, from their damage, from the embarrassment they bring, and protects you from the effects of the sin. So Allah, the consequences also. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then being Al-Ghafur, He conceals your sins in this. That's what, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives a sin of yours, you will not be caused to be embarrassed with it in this dunya, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will not embarrass you with it in the akhirah, because it's been forgiven. So Allah shields you from it, from the sin, and He conceals you, and He protects you from the hellfire when He forgives you for the sin. So that's what it means when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Ghafur. And the thing that is most burdensome and most heavy upon the human being is their sins, and so therefore they're in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who will forgive and will protect from the consequences and the outcomes of these sins. We agreed in the beginning of Ramadan that we want to look at the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as they pertain to our worship and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So many gems, so much fantastic material about istighfar, about maghfirah, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself having the quality of being Ghafur. And so either like we split it into 2-3 days, but we just said let's take one point here. Just one of the effects of making a lot of istighfar. One of the mashayikh, he said he had this lecture on forgiveness, on istighfar, making a lot of istighfar. He said, I finished the lecture and a man came to me at the end of the lecture. He said, Ya Shaykh, this lecture you give on istighfar is excellent. And I would like to encourage you to keep giving it everywhere you go. And I want to tell you a story so you can share it with people. So this man tells him that he had taken upon himself to make lots and lots of istighfar. He says, I make istighfar 30,000 times per day. He said, what's the effect of that? He said, Wallahi ya Shaykh, the effect is whatever I ask Allah Azza wa Jal, I get. Whatever I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I get immediately. The effects of istighfar. Now, then another Shaykh tells a story of, or this man says, I listened to a lecture by this Shaykh. I was at a masjid and this Shaykh gave a lecture about istighfar. And he said, if you make istighfar, Allah Azza wa Jal will bring you wealth. What does he cite? From Surah Nuh. Nuh alayhi salam tells his people, فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيُمْدِدُكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا. So Nuh alayhi salam is telling his people to make a lot of istighfar, because Allah is forgiving. He will send rain upon them, and then He will give them wealth and children, wealth and offspring. So this man needed wealth. So he said, I started to make istighfar 1,000 times a day. And then I upped it to 1,500 times per day. And nothing happened for 6 months. 1,500 times a day, astaghfirullah, and nothing happened. He says, then qaddar Allah, that same Shaykh who gave the lecture comes back after 6 months. So he says, I fought my way to the Shaykh after the lecture and I said, Ya Shaykh, 1,500 times a day for 6 months and nothing happened. Then the Shaykh smiled. He says, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you make istighfar out of full certainty in Allah Azza wa Jal, or to test Allah? Were you just testing to see if something will happen or not, something magical? Or were you really sincerely with full belief in Allah Azza wa Jal, with full certainty, making istighfar and asking forgiveness for his sins, or just asking? So the man said, then that moment is as if something opened up in my heart concerning istighfar towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I started to make istighfar with certainty, not to test if Allah Azza wa Jal will get me anything. And then he talks about how much wealth he came into and how many transactions and business dealings he got into. Phenomenal. Right. Similar story, a man and a woman, years they're not able to have children. And the Shaykh tells them, just make istighfar. The woman said, I would just stay at home, make istighfar hundreds of times a day. And my husband at work would make istighfar multiple times, as much as he could. In no time, they were able to have children. Now, a similar story, another couple, for 7 years, they are not able to have children. And the Shaykh tells them to make a lot of istighfar. And they made istighfar for a long time. They made it in the thousands also per day. And then nothing happened. So they came back to the Shaykh. And then the Shaykh tells them, look at the ayat. The same ayat we mentioned from Surah Nuh. فَقُلْتُ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ. And then the verse doesn't say, يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا. لا. إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا. Indeed, He is most forgiving. So he said, you make istighfar because you're in need of forgiveness. You're in need of your sins to be erased. You're not just saying this word, astaghfirullah, because magically you will get children, or you're doing it just so a child will come. He tells them, do it for that reason. So then they started all over again to make istighfar for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removing their sins. And out of certain, the Shaykh says, Wallahi, the man called me back in 2 weeks. 7 years they weren't able to have children. In 2 weeks, the man called, he said, my wife is pregnant. 2 weeks. وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ, and children. So, we'll conclude with this, okay? And that is, if every time someone said, here is a gem so your dua will be accepted. Here is a gem so you get wealth. Here's a gem. And when you share these gems, what percentage of the audience actually takes these gems to heart and puts great effort into them? Yani in this room, how many people are going to put excellent effort into making istighfar for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal? Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's everybody. But it might be that a few people here might get tawfiq and start making some insane amount of istighfar for the next year. And they will see some amazing things happening to them, inshallah. But what I'm trying to say, the Mashaykh taught us this verse of Surah An-Nur and Surah Nuh, and we would tell it to people. And every time, I travel, someone would come and say, please make dua for me. I'm unemployed. I'm also unemployed. My dua, khalas, going to the heavens. I'm also unemployed. Please make dua, I'm unemployed. And then I would tell them, make a lot of istighfar. And people, even you can see their faces when you say that. What does this have to do with my resume? Kida, But I remember this one guy. I told him, just make a career out of istighfar. While you're looking for a job, while you're applying and sending your resume left and right, make a lot of sincere istighfar for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Qadr Allah, months later, and this story happened to me, so I'm not telling you some shaykh, happened to months later, I'm back in that same city, and the man comes to me. He says, I was unemployed for 2 years, couldn't find work. He said, I started making some serious istighfar. And just in a short period of time, I'm employed, and I'm still employed, and it's the dream job I wanted. What I'm trying to say is that there are so many of these wonderful gems that we hear from the mashayikh and from the ulama, from the hadith, and from what the gems in the Quran. But how many of us will completely take it to heart? If we take istighfar, if we take it completely to heart and make istighfar sincerely for the sake of Allah, not to test if some money or some checks will come in the mail, we will see some amazing things. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us of those who are sincere in His worship. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم من جميع الذنوب فاستغفروه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. محمد.